He didn't plan to become a father. He only planned to survive. But in a forgotten bunker beneath the ruins, he found something that made him believe again. Hidden from the world above, a human soldier and an alien child began their secret story. One heartbeat at a time. The old elevator groaned as it descended, its gears grinding like the throat of a dying machine. Dust fell from the ceiling. The soldier's gloved hand clutched the small figure in his arms tighter, the alien child barely breathing, her silver blue skin dim under the flickering light. When the doors finally opened, silence greeted him. He had reached the lower levels, forgotten by time and untouched by war. Here, beneath the wreckage of the old world, he found what he'd been searching for, a place to hide. He kicked open the half-collapsed door of an old research chamber. Broken screens, shattered glass, and a faint hum of power lingered in the air. Somehow, the backup generators still ran, pulsing softly like a heartbeat. He laid the child on a makeshift bed, an old blanket over a crate, the closest thing to comfort in this tomb of steel. Her eyelids fluttered. She whispered something in a language he didn't know. He froze, listening. The sound wasn't words, it was music. A fragile melody, like a memory trying to stay alive. He turned on one of the consoles. Old human data blinked to life. Names, research logs, half-erased coordinates. Then alien script began to overlay it, glowing faintly in deep blue. 2 languages. 2 histories. Interwoven by accident, or maybe by fate. Days passed. He repaired the lights, scavenged food from abandoned military rations, and studied her, not as a scientist, but as a man trying to understand something bigger than himself. She began to wake more often. Her eyes reflected everything, his face, the ceiling, the soft shimmer of holographic light. When he spoke, she listened. When she spoke, it felt like light was forming words. One night, as he cleaned a wound on her arm, she reached out, small fingers brushing the scar on his cheek. For a second, he forgot the sound of war. He realized then, he wasn't hiding her from the world. He was hiding the world from her. The cruelty, the fear, the endless cycle of destruction. The hidden room became more than shelter. It became a cradle of trust between 2 species that had once called each other enemies. Sometimes, when the lights flickered low and she drifted to sleep, he'd whisper, "You're safe here. No one will find you." But deep inside, he knew that promises like that never lasted forever. And far above, beyond the ruins, beyond the ash, something else had begun to move. Something searching, something hungry, and soon, the hidden room would no longer be hidden. For 81 days, silence was their only companion. The old bunker lay buried deep beneath the collapsed sprawl of what was once a human city. Steel beams like ribs, broken walls like bones, the remains of a civilization that had burned itself out long before she was born. He had made this forgotten grave their home. The child, Lyra, as she called herself, had begun to speak. Her voice was soft, melodic, carrying traces of a language that didn't fit the human tongue. Sometimes she'd hum instead, and the light fixtures would pulse gently in rhythm, as though the room itself listened to her song. He'd grown used to the quiet, the hum of the generators, the drip of condensation down the wall, her voice like a lullaby that soothed the ghosts in his chest, until that night, until the signal. It began as a flicker on one of the dead consoles. A flash, faint, rhythmic. He frowned, moved closer. Static burst from the speaker, crackling through the heavy air. "Is anyone alive?" He froze. The voice was human, rough, strained, real. He turned every dial, every control he could find. The monitor's display sputtered to life, showing broken code and strange overlapping frequencies. Part human transmission, part something else. Human life form detected. Signal trace beneath quadrant. Then silence. He stared at the screen. No living human had broadcasted anything in years. The orbital networks had fallen with the wars. But somehow, someone, or something, had just found him. Lyra watched him from the doorway. Her eyes glowed faintly in the darkness, twin reflections of worry. "What is that sound?" she asked, her voice still learning human rhythm. "Danger," he said simply. The word didn't need explaining. She stepped closer, her small hands trembling as she touched his sleeve. He forced a calm tone. "We'll be fine. It's probably just interference, but it wasn't. He knew the difference. That wasn't random static. That was a ping, a location scan. Something out there was searching, and it had found a trace of them. That night he dismantled every powered machine, every emitter, every light that could betray their signal. The bunker fell into darkness, lit only by Lyra's faint bioluminescence, soft and silver blue like moonlight. She sat cross-legged on the floor, eyes wide as he pried out old circuits and shut down generators. When he reached for the last one, the power node that kept her life monitor stable, she placed her hand on it. "Please," she said. "Not this one," he hesitated. Her voice carried an undertone, almost like harmonics, vibrating through the air. The node pulsed once, then stabilized, quieter than before. She smiled faintly. "Hidden," he blinked. "What did you do?" She tilted her head, searching for words. "I made it quiet, like your heartbeat." He didn't understand, not fully. But the machines obeyed her. And somehow, he felt the bunker itself go still, not silent, but hidden, wrapped in a strange calm he couldn't explain. Outside, the world began to move. Far above the clouds, an automated probe drifted through the upper atmosphere. Its red optics scanned the planet's surface, searching for energy anomalies, and there it was. A flicker, a pulse of warmth deep beneath the ruins. Not quite mechanical, not entirely biological. Something new. It sent the data upward toward orbit, to something waiting in the cold void, something that recognized the signature. Human origin confirmed. Mission parameters, reacquisition, and the hunt began. 2 days later, the man woke to thunder. The ground shook. Dust rained down from the ceiling. Lyra stirred beside him, frightened. He grabbed his rifle and climbed toward the upper access shaft, his breath clouding in the cold. When he reached the surface, his heart stopped. The sky was burning. Drones, sleek, silver machines streaking through the air, their engines howling like predators. Searchlights carved through the ruins, scanning the rubble. They were methodical, precise, and worst of all, familiar. He had seen them before. They were human designs, but upgraded. God, he muttered. They rebuilt them. He ducked into cover as one beam swept across the ground, scorching what remained of an old sign. The drones were triangulating something, narrowing in. He turned to run back down, but a flash of blue caught his eye. Lyra stood in the hatchway, her small form outlined by the cold dawn light. He hissed, "Lyra, no! Stay down!" But before he could move, one of the drones shifted. Its red optics focused. It saw her. A metallic shriek filled the air. The drone's weapon pods opened, but then everything stopped. The engines stuttered. Lights flickered, and the air shimmered, warping around her like heat over desert sand. Lyra's eyes glowed brighter. The drone twisted violently, sparks bursting from its frame. Then silence. It dropped from the sky like a stone. The man stood frozen, breath heavy, watching the smoking wreckage. Lyra turned toward him, her face pale. "I didn't mean to," she whispered. It was loud. He lowered his weapon slowly. Whatever she wasn't just a child. That night they sat together in the dark, the broken console flickering weakly beside them. He stared at her across the dim light. "Lyra," he said carefully, "what are you?" She looked down, fingers tracing shapes on the floor. "Not human," she said softly. "Not machine," he frowned. "Then what?" She looked up, eyes glowing faintly violet. "Made from both." The words hit him like a wave. Human, machine, alien. She was the bridge. The signal that woke the world wasn't an accident. It was destiny calling. And as the wind howled across the ruins above, the soldier realized they weren't just hiding anymore. They were standing on the fault line between two civilizations. And both had just found them. The first beam of daylight never reached the ground. It fractured against the haze of ionized dust, scattering into 1,000 trembling shards. Above the gray horizon, dark shapes hovered. Drones, carriers, gliders, all converging on a single coordinate. The ruins of Earth were alive again, not with life, but with purpose. Something had reawakened the network, and buried below, in the bunker that had once been their sanctuary, the soldier and Lyra could hear it. A mechanical heartbeat, steady, deliberate, closer with each passing hour. He'd fortified the access shafts with scavenged plating and collapsed tunnels to buy time. He'd rigged pressure triggers and EMP grenades from old military supplies. But nothing could stop the sound above, the hum of machines cutting through the sky like vultures. Lyra sat cross-legged beside the dim lamp. She was pale, the glow beneath her skin flickering unevenly, like a candle struggling against the wind. He checked her pulse. Still steady, but slower. "You're burning energy," he murmured. "Stop using the link," she shook her head. "They listen. I must keep quieting." He hesitated. "Quieting what?" Her gaze drifted upward. "The voices. They call to me." Static crackled faintly through the wall panels, a chorus of distant mechanical whispers. He could almost hear words buried in the noise. "Return. Assimilate. Child signal." His stomach tightened. Whatever she wasn't just being hunted. She was being summoned. That night the world ended again. It began with thunder, but the sky was clear. Then came light, pure white, cutting through the clouds as the first orbital dropship descended. Its hull bore no flag, no symbol of any nation that still lived. Only a burning emblem etched into metal, the mark of the Aegis Collective, the last machine fleet built by humanity before its fall. They had come home. The first blast tore open the northern ridge, sending molten debris cascading across the ruins. Search drones poured through the gap, scanning, mapping, converging. He dragged Lyra deeper into the tunnels, the ground trembling with every impact. "We can't stay here," he hissed. "Where will we go?" she asked, eyes wide. "Down," he said. "As far as it goes." He lifted her onto his back and descended the maintenance shaft. The air grew colder, heavier. Pipes dripped condensation that shimmered faintly in her bioluminescent light. After what felt like hours, they reached a sealed bulkhead. A faded warning read, "Classified, Genesis chamber." He pried it open. A hiss of air, then silence. Inside was a vast cavern, smooth metal walls, crystalline conduits running like veins. At its center stood a circular console still pulsing with weak energy. Lyra gasped softly. "This place, it remembers me." He stared at her. "You've been here before?" "Not me," she said, stepping forward. "But the first of me." She placed her palm against the console. The room came alive. Holographic streams of data erupted. Symbols in human code overlaid with alien script, merging seamlessly. Images flashed. Human scientists working beside tall, silver-skinned beings. Cradles filled with suspended embryos. Hybrids. A voice log played through static. Project Lyra, Lifeform Integration and Resonance Adaptation. Objective, to create a bridge between neural code and organic instinct. He felt his knees weaken. "You were made here," Lyra nodded slowly. "Made, then forgotten." She looked at him, eyes glistening. "Why do humans make and forget?" He had no answer. The walls trembled again. A blast shook the chamber. Dust and sparks raining from the ceiling. The machines had found the old tunnels. He grabbed her hand. "Time's up." She turned toward the central console. "No, I can stop them." Before he could pull her away, light erupted around her, violet and white energy spiraling through the conduits. Her body lifted slightly off the floor, the air trembling with resonance. Monitors flared, showing the drone's descent. But one by one, their signals blinked out. On the surface, engines faltered, optics shattered. The swarm crashed into the ruins like falling stars. He shielded his face as the chamber filled with light. Then silence. When he opened his eyes, she was on the ground, unconscious. He rushed to her, shaking her shoulders. "Lyra, hey!" She breathed, shallow but alive. The console beside her had gone dark, smoking faintly. She had burned through every ounce of her power. He lifted her gently, whispering, "You saved us." But deep down he knew the truth. They weren't safe. The collective had lost its drones, but it had seen her. And now the galaxy would come looking. Hours later, he stood at the entrance to the cavern, watching dawn creep through the fractured earth above. The light touched her face as she slept, casting silver across her skin. For a moment, she looked peaceful, almost human. He whispered to the empty air, "I don't know what you are. But maybe you're what we were meant to become." Far above, unseen through the haze, a single satellite pivoted in orbit. Its lenses focused on the coordinates below. A new directive flashed across its core memory. Target acquired. Prepare phase 2, retrieval. The hunters weren't gone. They were regrouping, and next time, they wouldn't come alone. The sun rose behind smoke and ash. Above the clouds, ships broke through the atmosphere, black silhouettes against the morning light. They weren't drones this time. They were piloted. The Aegis Collective had sent its warships. Their purpose was clear. Retrieve the anomaly. Eliminate all interference. The soldier watched them from a shattered tower, the cold wind biting against his face. The air was thick with ozone and dread. In his arms, Lyra slept, pale, fragile, her faint glow dimmer than ever. Every breath she took sounded like the world itself holding on. He whispered softly, "I don't know if I can keep doing this." Her eyes opened just slightly. "You already are." They'd spent the night in the old Genesis chamber. He had found old power cells, rigged makeshift barriers, and patched his rifle with scavenged parts. But deep down, he knew no wall could stop what was coming. The machines had evolved. They adapted. They learned. And now they were descending. Lyra sat beside him, staring upward. "They sing," she said quietly. He listened, and then he heard it too. The hum. The low, resonant chorus of thousands of engines vibrating in harmony. A mechanical hymn of war. "They think I belong to them," she whispered. "But I belong to you." He shook his head, his throat tightening. "No, you belong to yourself." Her gaze softened. "Then let me choose." Before he could respond, the ground shook, the first impact tremor. The hunt had begun. The first wave hit before noon. Metal claws tore through the ruins. Armored units descended in columns of fire surrounding the region. From orbit, precision beams cut across the landscape, burning through anything that moved. He fought like a man possessed, ducking behind concrete ribs, firing until the rifle's barrel glowed red. The recoil slammed into his shoulder again and again, but he didn't stop. Every second he bought was one more heartbeat for her. Lyra stood behind him, her body trembling, eyes flickering between violet and white. Each pulse of light she released rippled through the ground like thunder, shutting down drones, frying circuits, disrupting targeting systems. But it was killing her. Every surge drained her faster than before. He saw her stumble, caught her just as she fell. "Stop! You'll burn out!" Tears shimmered in her eyes. "If I don't, they'll take you too." He pressed his forehead against hers. "I've lived long enough. You don't owe me that." Her hand brushed his cheek. "You taught me what it means to feel. Now let me return it." And before he could stop her, she stepped away. She raised her arms toward the burning sky. Energy bloomed around her. Not blue, not violet, but gold. The color of dawn. Every machine on the battlefield froze. The drones stopped mid-flight, their optics flickering. The warships above trembled. And through every mechanical core, a new signal pulsed. A song. It was hers. A memory encoded in melody. Fragments of laughter, of human voices, of warmth. A frequency that wasn't designed to destroy, but to remind. The soldier fell to his knees as light filled the horizon. Images flickered through his mind. Faces of people he'd lost. Places that no longer existed. For a heartbeat, the machines remembered too. The warships slowed. Their fire ceased. And across the sky, transmissions overlapped. Fragments of human voices long dead echoing through the static. "I dream again. And don't forget us. We were more than metal." Lyra's body shone brighter and brighter until it was impossible to look directly at her. Then, with one final pulse, the light expanded outward, touching everything, and the world went quiet. When he woke, there was no sound but the wind. The sky was clear. No drones, no ships. Only silence. He stood slowly, his vision blurred. The Genesis chamber was gone, replaced by a vast crater filled with shimmering glass. At its center, something moved, a faint glow, pulsing softly like a heartbeat. He stumbled toward it. And there she was, Lyra, no longer glowing, no longer otherworldly. Just a small girl, asleep beneath the light. Her skin was warm. Her breath steady. She was alive. He lifted her gently, staring at the empty sky. The machines were gone. The collective had vanished. And in their absence, a strange peace fell across the ruins. He whispered, voice trembling, "You did it." "You really did it?" Her eyes fluttered open. "Are we safe?" she asked softly. He smiled, tired, broken, but alive. "For now," he said. "But maybe that's enough." Weeks later, as the sun set over the rebuilt horizon, a faint signal echoed across the old satellite grid. No coordinates, no command, just a message, repeating endlessly. We remember the human who stayed, and the child who taught the stars to dream. Epilogue. In a small shelter overlooking the silver plains, the man watched as the stars blinked back to life. Beside him, Lyra traced constellations on the glass. Each one glowed faintly under her touch, responding to her presence. She turned to him, eyes wide. "Do you think there are more like me?" He smiled faintly. "If there aren't, there will be." And far above them, unseen between the stars, ancient machines drifted in silence. For the first time in millennia, they didn't calculate or patrol. They listened to a melody only two hearts on a forgotten world could create. A human, and the child who carried his dream into forever.